Përshëndetje motra.
Mirë se keni ardhur në Trime podcast.
I'm Lejla.
I'm Leonarda.
Welcome home. Serious question this episode.
Yes.
Are men okay?
No.
No, I don't think they are.
No.
We get a lot of like
Yeah.
comments, right? A lot of
Yeah.
ridiculously stupid, ignorant
Yeah.
comments. But we got 2 comments on one of our videos, and I was reading them, and I guess like it kind of was the reality of how steeped misogyny and hatred for women, and actually blaming women, how deep it goes,
Yeah.
like in our community. So I was reading these comments and a little bit dumbfounded, because I thought, surely not. And we get a lot of ignorant comments.
Yeah.
So when I was reading these comments, like I'll read them out. The patriarchy would never work without controlling matriarchy in the background. The man wears the trousers, but the woman decides which colour. Are you men okay? He's saying that there's something underlying that women are secretly controlling in the background.
Which is not true.
It's not true at all, because it's a statement that reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of the patriarchy and its mechanisms. The patriarchy is a system where men are disproportionately holding power over women, and in our societal structures, in our institutions, in wherever you go, in government, in education, in the legal system, right? It's does so at the expense of oppressing women and taking away their rights and their autonomy. So suggesting that women are somehow secretly controlling the patriarchy in the background is not only incorrect, but it's dangerous and harmful for women, because it misrepresents this power dynamic, right? The patriarchy operates on limiting women's autonomy and confining them to specific roles that serve men, right? So wherever women might have a small amount of influence in maybe like the domestic sphere or cultural decisions, right, that does not equate to systemic power.
No.
You can't compare the two. Like, the decision making in patriarchy is not equally shared between men and women. It's overwhelmingly dominated in leadership, like in politics, in law, in business, in religion, in community leaders. So the fact that this comment kind of wants to shift the blame onto women as if like we are somehow responsible for men's oppression. So essentially what a comment like this is doing, I guess what this mentality is doing, is shifting that responsibility onto women as if we're somehow to blame for men's oppression, and implying that we're implicit in maintaining this system that actively is harming primarily women, and erasing the struggles that women are really facing in gaining equality and gaining equity, and suggesting that we are somehow secretly in charge.
But we're not.
How? But the thing is this is a common tactic that is used by men, by the patriarchy, to discredit, in particular, huge feminist movements that are trying to create big changes for women.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, for me, when it comes to men blaming women, it's because women are saying no when it comes to sex. And it's as if men have this idea in their head that sex is entitled to them whether we like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their loneliness epidemic comes from the fact that they don't know how to respect women. And because they don't know how to respect women.
Yeah, and so it's somehow putting it on it's women's fault.
Yeah, which
right?
is not.
Except instead of accepting accountability that they did it to themselves.
They did it to
This
themselves.
is such a wild concept, because it's so dangerous for women's safety. Like, framing women as these hidden controllers only fuels a misogynistic narrative to justify violence, male violence towards women and girls.
Yeah, and it baffles me. For me as a woman, I will never understand how these decisions and thoughts go through a man's head, because you come from a woman, you are born through a woman, you are brought into this life through a woman, and a lot of men would never treat their own mums the way they treat it depends. I mean,
they won't treat their mums like that, because I guess in particular in cultures like ours and communities like ours, mums put their sons on pedestals.
Of course they do.
And as if like the sun shines out of their asses. And so therefore they then have this grandiose opinion of themselves. Their egos are so inflated that they feel now entitled to all women everywhere. And they're on this pedestal, this high horse that's so high up, they're right and everyone else is wrong.
Yeah, and it's sad, because the way I see it, a lot of mothers in our culture do that because their husbands are not giving them what they get from their own sons. and then they kind of let their daughters go or put them in the corner and don't really care as much about them as they do their sons, because they almost feel like, well, you deserve it because I went through it, you have to go through it. And I'm not saying this about all mothers, because it's not, obviously it's not true, but
it is rife in our community, like, and I think that we've had a lot of messages from women echoing this, you know, a lot of messages from women saying to talk about how sons are favoured in our community, and how mums are enabling and protecting their sons when they don't deserve to be.
No, they don't. I see it time and time again, and we get messages always as well, where there are issues in in-laws and the instigator is the mum and the son, or for example, in their own homes with their own mum, it's a set of rules for the girl and it's a different set of rules for the boy.
Well, this is why these statements are so dangerous to make, that like, oh, women are somehow controlling in the background, because inherently women in cultures like ours, when there is oppression happening from one woman to another, the reason why they're oppressing and the reason why they're perpetrating cannot be the same as men. It just can't. It's not the same reason as to why men are doing it. So a lot of women in our community, when they are abused, they go on to repeat the cycle. Abusers often use this logic of somehow women are hidden controllers as a way to manipulate and to keep controlling women even more, and further victimizing themselves, as if like, oh, these sons are all like hard done by, and absolving the men of accountability for their own
100%,
actions.
100%. And the men of our forefathers or whoever, they've done such a great job of making our culture, well, not even our culture, because like we always say, our culture is not how men act, but have made these cultural taboos so instilled in our community that men now don't really need to drill it into a woman.
It just is the way it is.
It is. It is the way it is, and that is even more dangerous.
Absolutely.
Because now you kind of have to open someone's eyes that are super glued shut with the Gorilla Glue, and make them see that actually what you've been manipulated since you were in the ovaries.
Yeah, and that's really hard. Like, I get that it's really hard for people in our communities, but in particular for women to do so, because it means actually opening your eyes and having to look at the reality of the state of play of actually the amount of violence and abuse that happens in our community. And I'm so sick of this eternal victimhood from men. I'm so sick. Like, a comment like that, like, by suggesting that men are puppets in a system run by women, like, this narrative casts men as like perpetual victims, which is not only untrue but so harmful to women, because the victimhood narrative undermines and legitimizes discussions about accountability, about responsibility, allowing men to sidestep the dangerous role they play in the patriarchy.
100%. And especially in our community, where 90% plus of all the domestic abuse and domestic violence, sexual harassment, all of that is actually carried out by men. It's not carried out by women. And women,
the stats don't lie. The research doesn't lie. Women's real lived experiences doesn't lie.
No, and it never will.
Yeah, like, even if we didn't have the research, just a woman's lived experience, just a woman's story alone is enough that proof that this is happening.
100%. 100%. But I think men are angry at the fact that now we also have social media, and now we are talking about all the things that a woman goes through, birth, all the chronic conditions, PCOS, periods, whatever it is. And men hate the fact that women are getting more attention than them I'm not saying that we're getting so much attention. What I'm saying is that there's so much more resources for women to learn more about their own bodies for the first time in history.
Yeah, it's more accessible to them, I guess. Like, it's more accessible.
And men hate it because there are loads of videos about a woman's body, a woman's mental health, a woman's brain that is completely different to an actual man's. And they hate the fact that, why do we always need to speak about women, blah, 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 blah. We've always spoken about men.
The whole world revolves around the patriarchy, revolves around men and their needs. And how we as women must be serving men 24/7.
Exactly. And that even includes medical research. It's all done on men. It's never done on a woman. And that's why me and you sit here today with PCOS with no cure.
I know exactly why they made me feel angry like this. It's because of how harmful it is for women. So instead of addressing the real harm that patriarchy causes, statements like that derail the conversation. And you know that this is my biggest bugbearer. This is the thing that makes me the most angry, is when the conversation about women is derailed completely, and when the myths are perpetuated to as if somehow women are accountable for men's violence. And that's not true at all. The patriarchy does not work because of women's involvement. It works by oppressing women, by taking away their rights, by taking away their autonomy, by exploiting their labour, and by limiting their opportunities.
100%.
This isn't about how because a woman chooses the colour of someone's pants. What are you talking about?
That's just stupid.
Somehow women are secretly in charge. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, in order to dismantle the patriarchy, we need to constantly be challenging comments like this, constantly be challenging conversations like this, because this is just like a small, minute, echoed comment of the power structures that be, of the huge power structures systemically, institutionally, that are ensuring that men are never held accountable for their role in violence towards women and girls.
And it proves how childish men are, and also it also proves how men feel so comfortable to think that way, and they think nothing's wrong with that.
Some false victimhood. I'm so sick of it. Like, as if this false victimhood somehow absolves men for their blame in women's oppression.
And it doesn't, because they're the reason for it.
Yeah, oh my God, absolutely. And so the other comment that we got that was kind of similar, I guess, like on a similar note to the other comment, was that the patriarchy did men wrong too.
Oh.
Whilst women were allowed to develop emotional intelligence, men were stuck from childhood, increasing this gap between them and fueling the need to control. So it's still our fault. Because we are emotionally intelligent, it's our fault why men feel the need to control us even more. Like, yes, is it true that the patriarchy causes harm to men? That is true, but it's also important to clarify why this happens. Like, the patriarchy involves rigid gendered roles. It absolutely does. No one can deny that. And that harms everyone, but it disproportionately harms women. So it grants men this huge systemic privilege, and women are the ones who are the victims of the abuse and violence in the patriarchy. Like, patriarchy restricts men's emotional development. Yes, that's true. It pressures men and it suppresses their vulnerability, because anything that is labelled as being emotional, understanding your emotions, is weak and feminine.
Yeah. Men
have a fear of femininity. They absolutely do. Why? Because the patriarchy has brainwashed them to be fearful of it. So this has 100% stunted their emotional growth and emotional development. Yes, it has. Absolutely. You're right. But how is that our fault?
It's not.
How is that our fault? Like, it's absolutely not our fault. Like, if you struggle with connection and communication, that's not women's fault.
And also, to an extent, if you realise that, if you've already realised that that's what's happened to you as a man, then it's up to you to change that.
Whose responsibility is it to change that?
It's your own.
Exactly. It's your own responsibility for your own emotional growth. Like, just because the patriarchy allowed women to develop emotional intelligence, which I don't agree with at all, we weren't allowed to develop anything. We were forced to do so. We were forced to manage our own emotions. We were forced to manage a relationship, to manage the household, to manage the domestic sphere, because these roles were imposed on us.
Yeah.
We had no choice, because it's been survive. Emotional intelligence does not equate to power.
No, it doesn't.
Emotional intelligence isn't a substitute for systemic power. Because how fucking dare you? How fucking dare you say because women are emotionally intelligent that somehow we hold more power systemically than you? It's not true. You struggle with emotional intelligence because it's a result of the patriarchy that does not justify or excuse the power imbalance that men hold over women.
And also, the patriarchy love to see men putting these comments towards women and blaming women, because it obviously benefits the patriarchy.
Exactly.
Because it keeps them in line.
Yeah, because the need for control isn't about the emotional gap between men and women. The need for control doesn't come from men's lack of emotional intelligence. It comes from the entitlement that the patriarchy has instilled in them.
Exactly. And it's all propaganda.
It's all propaganda. The
That's how
patriarchy
propaganda
teaches
works.
men that dominance over women is their right. It reinforces harmful behaviours as if, like, it's okay to control and to be violent to women. You have the right. You have the right to do that to women.
Yeah.
And then you also have the right to tell women it's their fault.
Yeah, exactly. And it's why men now, especially when the abortion ban and all of this came into power in the US, when men started saying, well, I can rape you now. I can do this now and I can leave you pregnant. How is that? That just makes you... I'm so sorry, but I would rather sleep next to a bear than I would sleep next to a man, except for my own husband. Like, I would rather sleep next to a bear. I would rather sleep next to a bear than I'd sleep next to a man, because a man is more dangerous to a woman than an actual bear.
Absolutely. Women face systemic oppression. They face violence. They face discrimination. The solution isn't to frame men as victims. Because women are somehow more emotionally intelligent to them. It's about dismantling the system in play that traps both genders. But I'm sorry, you can't tell me nothing. Women are the primary victims of the patriarchy.
100%.
Does it harm men? Yes. But framing them as if they are the primary victim actually is derailing the conversation about how the system is not just harming women, but how women are ending up victims of femicide.
Yeah.
Worldwide, not just in our community. This is happening all over the world.
All over the world. And it's a rising issue. And also that's why now we're seeing more a decline in birth rates. We're seeing more women taking over, I guess, different jobs and stuff in different industries. But we're seeing women go a bit more forwards. But that does not mean that they are not subjected to the...
Wherever they go, women are going to be subject to abuse and violence. I think we've pretty much figured that out. That it's somehow justifying what men are doing to women, this eternal victimhood that they have, as if it's like a natural response for them to do so. Like as if it's their birthright to be abusive and controlling towards women.
And it's not. It's not.
It's absolutely not.
No one made you God over women.
Emotional inequality is not an excuse for control or dominance over women. It just absolutely isn't.
No.
I think the things that really make me the most angriest about this is it's not the stupid comments we get where people are like, oh my God, you're like this, you look like this. I don't care about those comments.
No.
It's when there are people in the community, mostly men, who are trying to shift the focus to men's struggles to distract from the oppression that women are going through in our community. The patriarchy is fundamentally about power and control. The primary victims are women. I feel like I'm literally just repeating the same thing over and over again, but clearly I have to.
Yeah. No, you have to drill it into
Clearly. Like when we're having conversations, it's always redirected to men.
Always.
And diminishing the urgency to address women's oppression, in particular in ethnic groups such as ours.
Yeah.
It involves life-threatening situation. Women are dying. They're being murdered at the hands of their husbands, at the hands of their fathers, at the hands of men in the wider community. They are victims of sexual violence, sexual assault, economic inequality. And yet somehow we must care about men's feelings and we must put them at the centre, because heaven forbid women have a safe space anywhere.
Yeah.
And any safe space that women do have was created by other women, like refuges, like shelters, like crisis centres. We did that. Women did that because of society failed to meet women's needs.
100%. 100%.
So women stepped up. The safe spaces for women was a response to women being murdered by men.
Yeah. And to an extent, I'm not surprised, because men almost treat us like second-class citizens.
No, they do. They do. Absolutely. They absolutely do. Like this, women having safe spaces isn't a privilege for women. And it's definitely not a privilege that is taken away from men either. They're not denied the privilege of a safe space. Everywhere men go is a safe space.
Yeah. Everywhere.
Everywhere. Anywhere where men go, it's a safe space. They're not denied that privilege.
No.
It's not women having safe spaces or women only spaces is not a privilege. I'm sorry. It's just a response to women dying.
Yeah. And, this brings me back to a few videos, an episode before, where we were talking about the fact that I just went into a dessert place in Kosovo, and a lot of even women were like,
why are you lying? It's not like that. Yes, it is.
It's not like that. And how can you expect men not to invade your space when you're doing it first?
Because men are the primary oppressors of women.
I'm not
That's
doing
why.
it first, because if I go into an empty shop or wherever, I don't know, I don't care, and there's a man there, I'm instantly,
Yeah.
my focus is instantly on looking at the exits, looking at a way
Yeah.
out, because
Men are the primary
constantly-
oppressors of women.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely, they don't does that. They shouldn't be in all female spaces.
No,
But we're not responsible for fixing men's issues. We're just
No.
not. So it's simple as that. Like the patriarchy has taught men to suppress their emotions, but it's not a woman's responsibility to fix that.
no, it's not. And just like we've started this podcast, you can go ahead and start your own.
Facts.
Facts.
If you're so triggered and you're like, what about men? Why? Start your own movement.
Exactly.
Oh wait, you already have a movement. It's called the patriarchy.
Yeah.
It's not a woman's responsibility to fix men's issues, not at all. Like women have been forced to carry the labor, emotional labor, physical labor for generations and generations. They've carried that trauma through, and especially women in our community, our grandmas, our mums, our aunts, us now in our generation, the younger women. Like it just feels like the cycle is just constantly repeating itself, and it's happening at our personal cost and sacrifice.
Yeah.
And men have to take accountability for their own growth. I'm sorry, but you do.
Yeah.
It is not our job to dismantle structures that perpetuate harm towards men. That's men's job.
Yeah, exactly.
The same way that we've actually fought really hard to meet our own needs through feminist movements. And it's not because society didn't hand us a solution to help women. We found a solution for women. Women found a solution for women.
Yeah. And it's enough. But especially in our community, it's this thing where, because post-communism, post-war, huge immigration, whatever it is, and all the women had to sacrifice her whole life, her whole 20s or whatever it is, give birth to kids and run after the kids, run after the husband, make sure that the husband has food to eat, make sure the kids have food to eat, and then when they get to the age of 50, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And then, my wife isn't as, she isn't as strong as she used to be.
The thing is women's safe spaces were built out of necessity. We did so in order to protect ourselves against a world that completely ignored our needs. Like instead of questioning why men don't have similar spaces, why don't we have men only spaces? Everywhere's a man only space. We need to focus on the systemic reasons why women need those safe spaces to begin with.
Yeah, 100%.
Such as the prevalence of gender-based violence in our community, because everyone keeps wanting to act like we're just up here chatting shit and lying and just making up how dangerous it is for women in our community. How about you actually discuss the reality, the state of play?
I know men are going to find it really hard to change, but they need to change.
But you know what? I feel like the more we keep saying like men need to change, yes, they do. We've all accepted that. But we keep derailing the conversation every time we make men the center of it. Like suggesting that a man's emotional stagnation fuels their need to control, oversimplifies the problem that's at hand. Like the need for control stems from power dynamic that the patriarchy holds. It's not about men aren't emotional. Have you seen men when they watch football?
Oh my goodness.
Have you seen men when they watch football?
Yeah. Or boxing.
Yeah. I've seen the way men listen to each other.
Yeah. They're incredible.
Great listening to each other.
Incredible listening skills.
Great listening to each other, but not listening to their partners.
Yeah. They're incredible.
You can't tell me that men aren't emotional.
No.
Like, I actually refuse to believe that.
No, they are emotional.
Of course they are. Men are out here killing women. You can't tell me that men aren't emotional. They're raping women, killing women. Like, how can you ever sit here and say that men aren't emotional?
They are, I mean, especially when there's a boxing match or a football match, we all know that statistically.
Oh, yes, the statistics of violence towards women and girls, yes, the numbers go up massively. And that essentially is the real harm that's being done here.
Yeah.
By constantly trying to put men at the centre of these issues and are like, oh my God, there's such victims, the male loneliness epidemic. Like the real harm is that women are disproportionately affected and harmed and killed and murdered because of the patriarchy and because of the men that are perpetrating violence that is enabled and empowered by the patriarchy.
Yeah. And I just want to say the only thing I think we can do as women is what we're doing now. Literally talking about it, creating safe spaces and concentrating on our own selves and decentering men.
Absolutely.
They can fuck off. Like, bye.
So the issues are violence, oppression, inequality. This is what should be the center of the conversation.
Yep.
We should be talking about how this is affecting women, not how it's affecting men. We know how it's affecting men. Men are the ones doing the killing and not taking accountability. Men need to actively learn how to stop being so harmful towards women, but that's not a woman's job to fix.
No, that's not a woman's job to fix. That is a man's job to fix. And we can't take responsibility over that.
Absolutely. And I need any woman that's listening to this to know that you are not responsible for a man's actions for what they do to women.
No.
You're not. No matter how much they want to gaslight you, no matter how much they want to mentally abuse you to make you think that it is your fault, you're simply just not.
Yeah, when they say, oh, you made me do this. You made me shout. You made me get this angry. No, I didn't, honey. No. You got yourself
angry. Could have controlled yourself.
Because why am I controlled and you are acting like a childish, like
there is child. There is no cause for abuse, for any type of abuse other than choice. No. Choice is the reason why men abuse women. 100%. That's why. It's not mental health. It's not addiction. It's none of these. It's not because women are choosing the colour of their trousers, you moron. It's not because women are more intelligent, more emotionally intelligent than you. It's because you chose to do so.
Yeah.
And because you chose to be violent towards women, we've had no choice but to be so aggressive in creating safe spaces for women. They've become an essential part. It's not a luxury to have a safe space for women. It is essential because women are dying at the hands of men at an alarming rate.
Yeah.
It's going undetected and unrecognized and not acknowledged in communities like ours because everyone wants to act like it's not happening.
No, exactly.
Because they'd rather bury their head in the sand than actually address the fact that our rates of femicide in the Albanian community is, I don't even know if I have the right word for it. I don't know, because I feel like I've exhausted all the words of saying it's horrific and it's, astounding and it's all of this. And I don't know what more we need to say to highlight how dangerous the world is for women.
Well, I think, we keep repeating it. We just have to keep repeating it. We have to keep repeating it to the point where we get into the dreams of these men and Lejla and Leo echo. It's not even funny, but genuinely.
I don't know if anyone wants to dream about us though, to be fair.
I don't know. I mean, but it just a constant voice, a constant linking with everyone else that is speaking up and becoming this force to be reckoned with. That's literally the only thing we can do.
Yeah.
What men do in terms of how they feel, we don't care. I don't think me and you even give a shit. We don't care.
No, it's just not my problem to care. I care about women. I care about women. I care about having safe space for women.
I think the main thing for me, when we're speaking with women in the community that actually watch us, is how empowered they feel from what we're talking about. Yeah. And how moved, and they all agree with us and they appreciate the fact that someone's actually speaking about it because they feel like they're seen, and that's for me, that is
that's who this space is for. Exactly. So anyone who doesn't feel like anyone who feels like they can't relate to the space, okay, that's fine, move on, find another space that's for you. Instead of questioning why this space exists, why this podcast exists, support it. And actually try to understand why there is a need for a women-only space, in particular for Albanian women.
Yeah, and if you don't like it, then we don't want you here.
No,
it's as simple as that.
It's just, I can't explain how irrelevant someone is if they don't relate to what's happening here.
No, exactly.
They're so irrelevant, because if you can't support a movement like this, just move on.
Move on. Right. Move on with your black and white life. Just move on, because your life is so without flavor. There's nothing. For me, people that just don't think there's anything wrong with this live in a cave.
Absolutely.
Genuinely,
they
either live in a cave or they know it exists,
or
but they don't.
They're
care.
benefiting off. They're benefiting off it.
They benefit.
Essentially, that's what it is. They're benefiting off how the patriarchy oppresses women, and how in cultures like ours, how they're enabled and actually more so empowered to perpetrate against women.
Exactly, because the men's life in our community are 9 times out of 10 easier than the women's life.
And for some reason, valued more than women's lives. Not here, bitch. Not here.
It's just a constant thing. I think this week's episode has really concentrated on the patriarchy because we've had these comments, and I think it's been a while since we've actually directed the issue that actually patriarchy imposes to women and women's livelihood and lives and
also how much men feed off the patriarchy and how much it serves them to the point where they're so confident and comfortable out in the open making statements like this. And then you wonder why the prevalence of gender-based violence is so high in our community.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a time to silence. 2025 is not a year to silence women. We're not going to be silenced. So, do with that what you will.
Yeah.
Sadush comments. We don't care. Like, I don't care. Do whatever you want.
Sadush comments.
Like, but this particular episode it's genuinely for those women that sometimes feel so stuck with these rules and regulations and terms and conditions of patriarchy, which is almost like this porous, tasteless poison.
It absolutely is. The patriarchy is poison. It is. It's poison.
So we're going to constantly talk about it.
The fact of the matter is, we get a ton of ignorant comments daily, on a daily basis. But what I cannot let slide is comments like this that are inherently harmful and dangerous for women.
100%. Because it's not something to just take on the chin.
Absolutely.
It has to be called out.
Absolutely.
You called me and Lejla fat ogres, whatever. I don't give a shit. But this will not slide. Yeah. Because that's
absolutely not.
That's absolutely what we're here for.
I'm not having women come into our platforms and seeing comments like that and thinking, oh yeah, actually they're right. No, they're not right.
No,
they're not right.
They're not right. And if someone thinks that's a critical analysis of the podcast, really needs to watch hours and
But
hours.
there's nothing critical in that, in comments like that. No. That's not critical. That was actually just perpetuating men's eternal victimhood.
Yeah, and that's just free marketing for the patriarchy.
I don't have time for fragile male egos. I don't care about it. I don't care for it. I don't want to know. I don't care.
No,
I don't care. I care about women who are dying at the hands of men.
Yeah.
Point blank, period.
Yeah.